So Brad Whittington, author of wacky novels and winner of awards, was born in Fort Worth, Texas on James Taylor's 8th birthday and Jack Kerouac's 34th birthday, and is old enough to know better. He lives in Austin, Texas with the woman. Previously, he has been known to inhabit Hawaii, Ohio, South Carolina, Arizona, and Colorado, annoying people as a janitor, math teacher, field hand, computer programmer, brickyard worker, editor, resident genteel in a conservative synagogue, IT director, weed cutter, and in a number of influential positions in other less notable professions. I've been there. Brad is greatly loved and admired by all right-thinking citizens and enjoys a complete absence of cats and dogs at home. Welcome, Brad. Thank you so much for coming on.
What was that about? You have no pets at your house? What was that?
Yes, I enjoy complete absence of cats and dogs.
Okay.
Which I find, now this is an interesting thing, an observation made by someone who is not from here. I find Americans are very, very particular about pets. They're, like a pet is kind of another member of the family, which I'm sure it is in many countries, but you can't really mess with the idea of the pet in America.
No.
It's kind of a sacred idea.
You might tell somebody their baby's ugly, but never their puppy.
Right.
Never thought of that.
When I heard, I knew it was real. I thought it was real when I saw pet clothing, which is pretty clever, a lot of it that I see. But I knew it was real when I found out that pet therapists were a thing.
Yes.
I was like, is that like a character on a sitcom, like a guy who's a pet therapist? Or like, no, they really have them. Like if a cat has anxiety, or if your dog.
Actually, a cat, I don't think has anxiety. They're just a carrier.
Yeah. They like to make sure if you're not crazy, then you're clearly not doing your job as far as taking care of me is concerned.
That's right. Well, just think about it this way. If you locked a cat in the trunk and drove around town for an hour, you locked a dog in the trunk and rode around town for an hour, when you open that trunk, which one would be happy to see you?
The dog.
The dog.
Exactly.
The dog would be like, what are we going to
care.
do next? What are we going to do next? That was fun. Those bumps and everything, that was crazy. But okay, I'm cool. It's life. I'm happy.
I feel like we are unearthing like a debate from eons ago. Like we're kind of dilly-dallied into cats versus dogs territory, which I'm totally for. That's a debate to be had.
However.
For sure.
We may be straying afield from our intended purpose, are you trying to say?
That's true.
I developed what I call the BLCS, which is the Book Lethality Classification System.
Nice.
And you rank a book by the size of animal that you can kill with it. Mm-hmm. So like a paperback would be like a roach-killing book.
There's that.
And this book, here might be like a rat-killing book because it's pretty big.
Or a possum.
Right. Maybe a possum.
Right.
Yeah.
You have your moose killers like Stephen King's It,
right,
or something like that.
Take down
I
and
love
help.
that. I feel like you need to pass this on to the authorities. Should anything like that ever occur,
Amazon.
they can say, let's consult Brad Whittington's book lethality list here.
That's right. You have number stars, and you have the lethality class.
You're going to hear about that. Be like, Joe, where are you going with that copy of War and Peace? I'm going camping this week.
Hunting.
And I need to be ready.
That's probable cause, Joe. Right there. Brad, I know you've just released very recently a new book.
April 1st.
Which we are very, very excited to talk with you about. This is The Reluctant Saint. And now, Brad's bio didn't really give it away, but he is the author of numerous books. So he has several books tucked away. I don't know if that's the right term there, but he is the author of numerous books. And I was surprised to find out that this was actually a sequel to one of your earlier books. So maybe we could tell our listeners a little bit about The Reluctant Saint and what that's all about.
The Reluctant Saint features a guy named Hensley, and he's kind of a citizen of the world. He was ripped from his American home when he was like 9 and taken away to the jungles of Angola because his parents are like Doctors Without Borders people. And so he's growing up in a jungle, but he's not happy about that. And he runs away from home in the jungle when he's 16. Mm-hmm. And he lives his life by his wits. So he's just kind of bohemian. He first appears in the book Endless Vacation, which is about assisted suicide vacations, which is another thing. But we won't talk about that right now because we're trying to get to the Reluctant
I'm
Saint.
intrigued. Is that like one of those Chevy Chase vacations, or totally different?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Though that is just an interesting merger of two ideas right there.
Yeah,
I'm just imagining that one.
It's a thing. Well, it's not an actual thing.
It may
In
be
my twisted brain, it's a thing. So he shows up, and because of some things that happen in Endless Vacation, Hensley, who is approaching 53-ish, realizes, you know what, I've just never settled down anywhere. I don't have anything real. So at the beginning of Reluctant Saint, Hensley, when they land on the little cruise ship in Galveston, he decides he's going to go back to the one woman that in his 20, 30 years of wandering the earth really stood out as the one I never should have left. And he thinks, I can go back. It was great. It's only 11 or 12 years ago. We'll just pick up where we left off because, it'll be a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't quite turn out like that, as he discovers when she pulls a gun on him when he comes in. So,
yeah. I mean, I love the idea and the character himself as well, Hensley, just right off the bat. There's just an oozing of this self-confidence, this charm, this witticism, this way that he interacts with everyone that he kind of comes into his orbit, really. And I loved him as a character. He was a very multi-level character, but someone that I would have loved to meet in real life. And where did the idea for Hensley kind of come from? Where did this person materialize from?
He's an amalgam of several things. One is my college roommate, whose last name is Hinderling, so that's where the name comes from, and some aspects of his character. Some of it is from Woodhouse, Bertie Wooster, kind of a glib thing. His style of talking comes from a friend of mine from Perth. He's an Aussie, but he talks like a Brit, and I asked him one day, if you're from Australia, why do you talk like you're from England? And he said, snobby parents. So pretty much his style of speech is patterned after Jeremy.
Yeah. I love that. It's interesting too. I mean, I'm kind of on the other end of that where mine's warped a little bit as I've gone along.
Right.
But I do have a friend too, Australian as well, and she lived in Hong Kong for several years, and she also adopted a very British accent. So when I met her, I was like, oh, where are you from in Britain? She's like, I'm from Aussie, mate. And she could just turn it on.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really because she taught children, and to teach in a very British kind of, yes, mom type way it worked really well for her kind of in Hong Kong. But she could turn that on and off, and it was quite amazing to really do that. We haven't really touched on Special Agent Dave Fletcher and his relationship with the protagonist, the very colorful protagonist, Hensley.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Dave.
Well, Dave Davison is Hensley's younger brother. And as you learn in Endless Vacation and also is reprised in Reluctant Saint, when Davison ran away at age 16, he left behind his brother in the jungle with the parents. He promised to come back, but he never did. And so he promised that Davison would not tell anybody that he had left and he would come back. But he didn't come back. And so Davison felt betrayed, and he's resented his brother ever since. He grows up to become a Secret Service agent. And they haven't seen each other for 25 years. Endless Vacation is about 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And Reluctant Saint starts 10 minutes after Endless Vacation ends and goes for 2 weeks. So the whole thing's about a month in the life.
And now the two brothers are very antagonistic. I mean, they're polar opposites in many ways.
Right.
The ways they've chosen to kind of live their lives. They're obviously their characters. Is the story a little bit about that redemption of kind of, someone finding themselves at a later time and kind of coming to grips? I mean, Hensley is going out to try and reconnect with the love of his life, he thinks.
Yes.
So there's a lot of, he ends up kind of running into a lot of these people from his past, and yet he's at a place in his life where he's, getting on in years. How was the idea of redemption or this kind of idea of redemption for Hensley's character a part of the book, or kind of did you think it was a part that deserved?
Yeah, it was very consciously a part from the beginning. The thing about Hensley is he's very polarizing. There are a lot of readers who despise Hensley because he seems to be a leech, a very charming leech, but a leech nonetheless. And then there are others who, love Hensley, or some that find him amusing but disapprove of what he does. At the end of Endless Vacation, Hensley is leaving Cancun, and he says, thinks to himself, I'm here in North America. I haven't been here for many years. I wonder what Crystal's up to in Santa Fe. And I just tossed that off. And when I came to write the sequel, I went, oh, well, that's what this book is going to be about.
Yeah.
He goes to hunt up Crystal in Santa Fe. So that's all I had as a basis for this novel, was that one sentence. And I was thinking about, in earlier writing on the air shows, we talked about this book way before I had an idea for it. And I was wanting to write a book where a guy does a cross-country trip and collects found poetry from bathroom walls. And I thought I could crowdsource the material by have a blog and people could contribute stuff. It could be like
wow.
It was like a really cool idea. I never did it. But I thought that was going to be this book. I thought Hensley was going to do that. But there's really no point. Yeah. You need to have some kind of goal, and just going around reading the poetry off things on bathroom walls, that's not much of a goal.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not narrative momentum, right? You know what I'm saying?
Can I ask a question about your protagonist, this Hensley? Why in the world would he think that this woman would just be going, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this moment for 12 years for you to walk in the door, my Romeo, my heartthrob. What man would think that?
Hensley. He is quite self-absorbed. He does. He goes to Santa Fe and discovers she's actually in D.C. visiting her son. So he flies in, and as he's going, he, for a brief moment, wonders
how this is going to go.
The reception is going to go, but he quickly pushes that aside because he's going, for that 2.5 years we lived together in Santa Fe, it was great.
But he left her, is that right? Or she left him?
He left to bike the Andes, top to bottom. It's about a 4-month trip. And while he's gone, September 11th happened. And he had his passport was.
Well, that wasn't in the Andes. What's his excuse for not getting back? See, I'm on this woman's side.
Here's why. He could not come back because his passport was what he called a document of convenience. Right. In other words, not real.
Not yet.
And it was a Lebanese passport.
So after September 11th, it got a little bit harder to work your key.
Come back in with a Lebanese passport. Might not get past the immigration.
Yeah.
So he started doing other things, and
did he ever say sorry, baby? I'm not coming back, or
that comes up. She kind of mentions that.
Okay.
I mean, this is a man who left without explanation his parents and his brother, and I mean, he does a lot of leaving. I feel as a character, Hensley does a lot of leaving.
Well, he started then, and he had a life of leaving. After that. Back to what you're saying about this thread of redemption, and was that baked in from the beginning? All I had was this sentence: "What's Crystal doing these days in Santa Fe?" Probably her kids are grown by now, so hey, we'll go back. So I was thinking about this novel. What is it going to be? Is it going to be the found poetry novel? Is it going to be something else? When I was listening to U2's No Line on the Horizon album, and the song Moment of Surrender came on. And the third verse says, I was speeding on the subway through the Stations of the Cross. Now I thought, well, that's a very clever line, because you got subway stations, you got Stations of the Cross. And then out of the blue, I just had this idea. What if I use the Stations of the Cross as the structure for this novel? And so I spent the next several weeks reading about Stations of the Cross, and then I started plotting out what happens to Hensley and where he goes and what he does, and I aligned them to some degree with the Stations of the Cross. So it's not a religious book. It's not, about the crucifixion, but things that happen in Stations of the Cross. There is a similar thing that happens to Hensley that pairs up. So it's not, if you probably would never notice it if I didn't tell you. But once you know that, you can go and go, well, I can see this one. I don't know about that one, but I see this one.
Yeah. Well, I think it really marks a good author. I mean, you mentioned earlier you had this idea of this guy kind of traveling cross country collecting these poems, and the ability to look at an idea like that and say, does it have a backbone? Like, is there a narrative that, is there the person that we want to be following, or is it just a really cool idea? And it's great to be able to shelve that, whether temporarily or not, and say, I need something meatier. Like I need the why. Like, it can't just be a guy doing a cool thing. Like there's got to be something behind that.
Right. You can't be wandering.
No.
My working title for this, and this is an example of what you can't do. The original was Endless Vacation. And now I've got him going across, the country looking for poetry. And so just as a working title, I called it Aimless Vacation.
Okay.
So I just had something I could call it, right? And I knew I would never use that word because who is going to pick up a novel off a shelf that says Aimless Vacation? They're going like, well, nothing happens.
Especially after Endless Vacation.
That's right. What's left? Spirit wandering through the ether.
But now the title makes more sense as well.
Yes.
Now that we've kind of heard about it. It's in a way almost a pilgrimage of sorts. And there's that aspect in there too of this, and the Reluctant Saint just so perfectly kind of encapsulates who Hensley is as a person. Someone willing to be able to experience that, but not overtly. You wouldn't kind of, meet him in a bar and be like, he's out to please people or make amends. No, he's definitely not that kind of person.
Most people who meet Hensley would not apply the word saint.
No.
No, but actually that title, it was very difficult. It's the last thing that was developed and the hardest thing to do. And it was my critique group that actually helped me come up with the right combination of words.
Yeah. It's all about the right combination.
Right.
So what would you say, we're talking about endearing characteristics like magnetic traits and stuff like that. And you look at a character like Hensley, and what would you say, I want to say his confidence, but what would you find most redeeming about him?
Well, in the first chapter, now Hensley is always scamming people, right? He's always trying to find a way to live for the next month,
right?
Survive. In the first chapter, he goes up to a bartender at the rooftop bar at the Tremont Hotel in Galveston and says, "Remind me of your name." Okay, now he's never been to this bar, never seen this guy in his life.
Yeah.
He starts chatting him up. He's got this chick with him, Maisie, who escaped from Cancun along with him and his brother. And he spins this story about how last time he was here, the bartender, whose name was Julian, gave him advice that changed his life, and it caused him to go down to Paris and hunt down the love of his life. And here she is, and we'd never be together if it was not for you. And Maisie is going like, "What are you talking about?" And so he gets her to play along. They get their drinks, and then she just interrogates him. "What the heck? You just told this guy a pack of lies." Yeah. He said, "Look, this guy, we walked up. He didn't even look at us. He's at this high-end bar. He's not working at McDonald's. He didn't even look at us. He just spun a napkin out and said, kept doing what he's doing. What'll you have?" Says he needs to learn. He is not in the business of serving drinks. He's in the business of engaging humanity. There are a million stories that come through here every year. And he is in a position to change lives. And I just gave him a clue that he now has a vision that, what? I might see my life a different way. And he said, and every person he serves tonight and maybe from now on will benefit from that lie that you say I told. And so you see this, and he says, plus it got me this excellent drink without having to relieve a tip, And so you're going like, okay, is he a nice guy? Is he really worried about the guy? Or is he just working them to get something?
Right.
Yeah.
I think the best characters will usually, they won't purposely stray, but they'll be placed in like a morally ambiguous position to where whatever you call them right or wrong, but at the end of the day, it's you who called them that.
Right.
They're living their lives. They're above whatever. It's not that they feel they're above reproach. They're just above whatever your decision about them is.
Yeah, I'm not sure Hensley can live outside of a morally ambiguous space.
Not at all. He does his thing. He gets down.
Well, I know, Brad, you did have a small piece that you were willing to share with us on the air. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
So whenever you're ready, feel free to take it away.
All right. This is in chapter 11. Oh, we need to talk about the naming of the chapters, maybe.
Remind me, I'll bookmark that one and we'll talk
yeah.
about that one.
Chapter 11 is a flashback back to before Hensley runs away. So it's set in at the clinic in Angola. And it's Hensley's thoughts. Hensley walks through the jungle back to the compound, fancying himself a latter-day Natty Bumpo. If his gang back in the States could see him now, they wouldn't recognize him. Of course, they're just starting high school back in Pennsylvania. Having worked their way through junior high, they are gearing up for a 4-year tour of duty in the art of navigating the landmines of the cutthroat social games of society. While he is engaged in the 5th year of his self-study course in learning the ways of the jungle. Hensley wonders if the two worlds are really that far apart. Obviously, they observe different dress codes. He doubts his ratty T-shirt, cargo shorts, and tire-tread sandals would serve in the halls of a prep school. But he suspects the civilized world is just a different kind of jungle. Surely the skills he's acquired in the past 5 years, watching quietly, gauging his prey, learning its ways, its preferences, its blind spots, exploiting this knowledge to gain the upper hand, must be transferable. He has no doubt that if by some lucky turn of fate he found himself back on his home turf, he would regain his position as leader of the pack in no time at all. Smiling at the thought, he enters the clearing, avoiding the clinic, on his way to the deal table behind the house. Sets down his game bag. He goes to the fire pit, builds a tent of sticks, and gets them going. Then he grabs a bucket and retrieves water from the stream at the bottom of the hill. Back at the table, he sets the bucket to one side, pulls a hunting knife from his belt, and begins dressing the half-dozen Namakwa doves he bagged, using nothing more than a slingshot and his native skill. Hensley drops the last dove breast in the water as the rifle shot of the clinic door echoes across the clearing. He glances over his shoulder. His father approaches, Davison close on his heels. He tries to imagine Davison in a second-grade classroom. The poor kid would lose his lunch money on the first day and every day after. Shaking his head, Hensley threads a sun-gazer lizard onto a skewer, sets it aside, and picks up another lizard. His father stops next to the table and watches him skewer the second lizard. "We could have used you in the clinic this afternoon." Hensley shrugs. "I was out getting dinner." "Your brother can already roll a bandage better than you, and he's only 7, half your age." "Sure he can." Hensley thrusts the stick through the lizard, ripping it open. "But can he take out a sun gazer with one shot? Because that's all you get. If you miss, you go hungry." "We have plenty of provisions, and we can barter for dinner if we want game. And you can train a monkey to roll bandages if Davison can't keep up." Hensley snatches up the lizards and grabs the handle of the bucket. "It's a matter of priorities. We're here for a reason." For the first time in the conversation, Hensley looks straight at his father. "You're here for a reason. The rest of us are just hostages." He glances at Davison as he pushes past toward the fire pit and realizes his monkey remark has found the wrong target. He hesitates, but is too angry to form an apology. If there's one thing he's learned, is to show no weakness in front of his father.
And how telling of his character too. Just this little part. It just kind of brings so much more depth to who Hensley is. Now, The Reluctant Saint is the sequel to Endless Vacation,
Yes.
and you're not a stranger to sequels. I know.
No.
I know the last time I remember you were on, I think we were speaking about Postcards from Fred.
Yes, which is
I
the
believe,
fourth Fred book.
Fourth. So, do you have something? I mean, is this one? Do you feel like the Vacation? Is it the Vacation series, or what's the?
No, it's a Fletcher Brothers.
Okay, got it.
Now, I did write Endless Vacation is a kind of a thriller, kind of in this style. About the theme of assisted suicide vacations. But I also wrote the comedy assisted suicide vacation book called Strange Vacations.
A lot of these vacations, I feel like I might not be comfortable having,
Well, it's
They're not your
targeted
typical-
to a specific demographic. If you don't want to die in a hospital hooked up to a machine,
Yeah.
then you go away, have the time of your life, and you never come back.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I mean, you obviously have an interest in that. It's an interesting topic. I know in other countries around the world, assisted
Right.
suicide. I know in Oregon now, I think it's legal
Yep.
for that. How is that something that you kind of stumbled upon and found an interest to that, or?
Yes. When I was living in Honolulu, I read a newspaper article about Las Vegas being the number one suicide destination in the country.
Wow.
So it's not the number one in suicides. That used to be Seattle, I think.
Okay.
It's very gloomy up there. And
That's true.
and dentist used to be and may still be the most suicide-prone profession. So if you're a dentist in Seattle,
It's pretty much over with.
Wow.
it's anyway.
Dreadful.
Martha's like, ooh. So if you're going to commit suicide, but you don't want to do it where you live, you want to go somewhere else, Vegas is the number one place that people go because you're so anonymous there. It's so superficial and everything. And so I'm reading this article, and it's very fascinating. And I think, well, if you're going to go on vacation to kill yourself, what travel agency would you use?
I'm just thinking about all the things that you could do before you go that would be so awesome. I mean, you could...
Your bucket list.
Yeah. I mean, and all of the nefarious characters that are there that you could do some kind of crazy things with. I mean, before you go. I mean, you could... So many birds could be killed as well as
Literally.
yourself.
But it's interesting too, taking on, a subject that is a difficult subject to kind of discuss in general, and
Yes.
and kind of putting a more human face or a more kind of task oriented, if you will, perspective on something like that. That's very interesting. There was
Yeah.
something you reminded me to ask you before we went to
the
break.
chapter titles.
The chapter titles. Tell us about those.
When I was writing this book, I was using Scrivener. I don't know if you've used Scrivener.
Love Scrivener. Big
And
fan.
and one of the things I did, you got that binder thing on the left that shows you all the document, text files that you have, and I do one per scene, and I have a folder for each day, and this is divided into days and the scenes in the chapter. So if it just said, 1, 2, 3, or whatever, I went, oh, wait a minute, what did I say he was doing in that other chapter? Then I would spend half an hour trying to find it. So I wrote titles to the chapters, kind of what was going on, but they were really flippant things, like whenever he leaves D.C. and heads back to Santa Fe, I called it Westward Ho, and I remembered that, right? So I didn't have to know. I mean, I would knew what that meant. So as I got to the end, I thought, you know what? It might be kind of cool to keep these titles. And the more I looked at the titles, they were a little too cheesy and obscure, cryptic. So I thought, I like the idea of titles, but it can't be these titles. And so I sat down with the woman one afternoon, and I decided one word. It's a one-word title, and it fits what's going on in that chapter, but it can have multiple meanings. And so, and in the different ways it has multiple meanings all work. So let me pull out some examples here. I should have actually given this some thought before I do it, because
Do you need your readers? Do you want to borrow
I
my
can
glasses?
read it. It's just that I'm going like, oh, okay.
What did that one mean again?
Yeah, exactly. What's going on in this chapter?
And we're
Okay,
adjusting.
here's one that's called claymore. Now, claymore is a sword. It's also a landmine.
Oh.
And so, are things that happen in this chapter that could be looking like an offensive or defensive weapon, or it could be, okay, everything just blew up.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
There's the pursuit could be something that you're doing. It could also be being chased. Right? Gauntlet. Now, gauntlet is a glove you throw down. It's also a row of people you go through while they beat you. Right?
I did not know.
I didn't
Run the
know
gauntlet.
Okay.
You can throw down the gauntlet, but you can run the gauntlet. So these things relate to the chapter at multiple levels, just these single words. Not easy thing to do.
No, I was
ladies
just
and
thinking-
gentlemen.
Hand me
That
that book.
I was just thinking that because when you went from
Thank you.
the kind of short synopsis in a couple
Right.
of words to one word,
Yeah.
one word is hard to. I mean, I was just looking at Joe because I'm thinking of poetry. Like that's you're
Right.
getting into poetry
Exactly.
level when you're starting to kind of encompass an entire concept into one word.
And I love the concept, period. And I'm big on unique words and word history altogether. So I just like listening to some of the ones you rattled off, like when they have like the double meanings and everything. Not double
Yeah.
meanings, but the double definitions and everything.
Right.
Like it's the analogy from claymore, from sword to
Right.
landmine. Both.
Well, there's one that's crux,
Yeah.
which means cross, but it also means you're coming to this intersection point, to the
Yeah.
to the heart of what's going on.
The same as cleave, to take things.
Cleave is actually an opposite.
Yeah. To take to we
It
put
means to join together or to split up. Now,
Yeah.
what other word is the opposite of itself?
yeah.
Okay,
Dust.
I have to ask you. You've got chapter 34, quietus. I've always heard that, the big quietus.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
It's a pause.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't really want to tell people that, okay, this is a pause in the action. You're like, I can skip over this chapter. But a lot happens. It's actually like a calm before the storm, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so how do I get that idea, the calm before the storm, down to one word? It took us several hours just to name these 30-something, 40-something chapters.
Well, I love the idea of you kind of having all these little Easter eggs kind of put through. And you were talking to me before we went on the air about what you like to do is kind of have these pull-out quotes that you would kind of take. And I believe you put them on Twitter, I think that was, if that
yeah,
was
Twitter
correct.
and Facebook.
Yeah. So you would kind of like, as the book was coming out, you would have these pull-out quotes, these very, very clever, fun little snippets of characters and so forth. And you did give me a fantastic list, which I have there. How many was it that you ended up pulling out?
For this book, it was 137.
Wow, look at that.
So I did one a day for 3 months or 4 months. I started January 1st, and it came out April 1st.
Yeah.
Because it's April Fool's Day, and it's Wonderful Press, and so there you go.
Yeah.
But so I had 4 months, the first 4 months of the year, but I still had 17 quotes left over, so we got halfway through this month before I finally ran out.
And I love that too, because it's thinking, I mean, obviously someone who is self-publishing, someone who is kind of an independent author, you have to do a lot of your own marketing. And
yeah.
it's a great idea to kind of ease readers into a new book with these fantastic little like shots of what you can expect.
Right.
And I think it's very creative. I think independent authors are getting so fantastically creative about how to really engage with their audience. And like you
They
said,
have to.
yeah, they have to. Yeah. That's also one of the parts too. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a chance, just for our listeners now, to know more about where they can find your work, your books, and so forth. Where can we find out more about you, Brad?
BradWhittington.com will point you to everything you need to go. Facebook, Twitter. I have an extra section. It's kind of like the extras on your DVD.
Yeah.
It's an extra thing. It's back. Maybe deleted scenes or backstory on things, or for this book, I actually did a location scouting trip to Santa Fe and Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
And I did a journal of the 8 days of that trip and the things that happened and pictures and everything.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting, if you're interested in the book, then that will fill in some details in the in the back.
And
Yeah.
it's perfect timing, actually.
And the terrifying point on Mount Hood, that
Yeah.
was, yeah, we thought we were going to go off the edge there for a second in my sister's sedan.
Yeah, remind me to tell you one day about my adventures in Yosemite. Ooh. Cliff faces.
Oh, yeah.
It's perfect timing, actually, asking you about where to find more of your work, because one of my friends, listener of the show, actually just asked me about thought the concept about the suicide vacations is spot on, and he asked for information. So I'm definitely going to throw the website at him, because I think he's probably still listening now if he's not out of the car. But shout out to Danimal out there.
But Brad, I did kind of touch on this a little earlier. Is there a third that we can expect in the Fletcher?
In the Fletcher series? Right now, I think I need to have a sequel to Muffin Man, which is about a sheriff who hears voices coming from a muffin. It's.
I think we talked about that last show as well.
Now the thing is, everybody goes, "Well, that's funny," but actually, it's the most serious book most serious.
I'm
novel.
singing the song in my head.
I was going to say, does he go around
Do you
asking
know
people
the
if
Muffin
he
Man?
knows
I mean,
them? He is
the Fletcher Brothers
he's
stuff,
a man of the law.
Hensley, lighthearted. Most of the books are pretty lighthearted. Muffin Man is the least funny,
Wow.
but it's still got a talking muffin in it.
Yeah. That's interesting how you weave that in there. The surrealistic with the serious, you know. That's very
Well, I
exciting.
dreamed the first 20 pages, so it really was surrealistic.
You were dreaming when you wrote this?
I dreamed it and got up and wrote it down.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, we have been speaking today with Brad Whittington, a regular that we love having on the show. And when the sequel comes out to The Muffin Man, we want you here in the seat talking about it. We want to hear about that muffin and the adventures, serious adventures. It sounds like very, very serious.
Yeah. They're not quite as flippant.
We like flippant.
Well, thank you again for joining us today, Brad. This
shucks.
has been Writing on the Air. We're here every Wednesdays from 6 till 7. I'm one of the co-hosts for this evening, signing off today, Lisa Onland, as well as Joe Brundage and Martha Louise Hunter, who's done a fantastic job running the board tonight.
Thanks.
We will see you all next week. Thanks for listening.